Hey, you're watching the Find the Others podcast. Allow me to introduce our guest today. His name is Christian Rasmussen. We talk about his inspiring journey from addiction recovery to becoming a successful entrepreneur in the plant medicine world, specializing in Amanita muscaria, the famous Mario mushroom. As the founder of Minnesota Nice Botanicals, this dude is like the Amanita king. We talk about the challenges he faces building his business on plant medicines while the FDA is changing its stance. We go deep into the mystical aspects of this often misunderstood mushroom and some of his personal psychedelic experiences, like with DMT. So kick back and enjoy this conversation with Christian Rasmussen. Christian, thanks for coming on, man. It's nice to meet you online, hopefully face to face one day. So I'm Tyler, and we've been connected through our mutual good buddy, Gabriel. And so I want to give you a chance to kind of introduce yourself. And I also just wanted to say that Gabe told me that you had a really cool story, like the whole background. So I've been purposely avoiding it because, there's the bio on the website, other podcasts. So I'm like, oh no, I want to hear it fresh for the first time, straight from the source.
Sure.
So if you could just tell me like what you do, your backstory, and then how you like met Gabe, and then
Yeah.
link it all together.
Yeah, for sure. So I run Minnesota Nice Ethno Botanicals. We're the largest retailers of Amanita muscaria here in the States and potentially the world. That's hard to say for sure. I was getting off of benzodiazepines in 2019 that I'd been prescribed to for 10 years. After battling with various drug addictions through my 20s, I had gotten off of basically everything under the sun up until this point, and benzos were like the worst thing, hands down. Like I've said before, I would get off opiates 10 times in a row before getting off benzos again, and that's like 100% true. It's that awful. Part of the reason that it's so bad is that it's so lengthy. Like people go through benzo withdrawal for some people will go through it for 10 years. It's really not withdrawal at that point. It's repairing a damaged GABA and glutamate system. But yeah, I mean, I know people that are dealing with it that have been off of them for 10, 15 years and are still very, very sick. They haven't been able to heal their GABA systems. So I was off of them for a year, and it was complete torture, mental torture. Like I would say, while I was going through it, I would say I would rather be strapped to a chair and physically tortured for weeks on end than have to go through this. It destroyed my marriage at the time. It destroyed relationships, friendships, relationships with family members. It was extremely brutal. Words cannot begin to describe how painful it was. And I was a year into it. I started building a cannabis company. I was maybe a little overambitious, and I've always been an entrepreneur, and I wanted to do something as I was going through this because I knew how bad it was going to be. I didn't know how bad it was going to be, but I'd heard. So I gave myself a little project. Again, was probably overambitious, extremely difficult. In the early days of building up like the CBD website and whatnot, I would work for 5-minute blocks at a time because I would get so frustrated and I would be in like terror and complete panic just from trying to get things resolved. So I would do 5-minute chunks. But yeah, so I had that built and going, and it was moving slowly, but we were operating. And it was a year to the day after I got off benzos that I was on a hike, and I found these mushrooms growing, and they were Amanita muscaria variety Gasoi, so they're the orange cap Amanita muscaria. It was all, and looking back on it, it was almost as if they were speaking to me, like they were beckoning me, and there was in that moment I felt the most magnetic allure or pull that I'd ever felt for any substance or really anything at that point in my life. I've had that pull for various things. You get that pull with people or individuals. You'll get that pull with various plant medicines, like I've had it with psilocybin and ayahuasca. This was completely different. It was so powerful. And in this like little communications that we had, or these little communications that we had, it felt like they were telling me that they were able to help, but not only that I was going to help them as well. And I just knew that they were about to play a really big role in my life. I didn't know what that meant, but I knew it. So I picked them and I went to the house and I did some research, and I've always known about Amanita. Like it's been across my radar, or it's been on my radar many times, but I've never experienced it. And I knew about the horror stories because like back, I mean, this is in 2020. It wasn't that long ago, 5 years ago, but there was like no good information online about this stuff. And I had browsed Arrowhead. When I was a teenager, I would like look on Arrowhead and read people's experience reports. And for those that don't know, Arrowhead is like a database of different psychoactive substances. And so I'd read all these experience reports of people taking 15 grams of Amanita raw and like vomiting like crazy and going into like what they equated to seizures and having a really bad experience. And now looking back, I like to equate that with like a teenager deciding to drink for their first time and they like down a fifth of vodka. It's like that's not how you start with things like this. But there was one woman online named Amanita Dreamer who had just started her YouTube channel, who was just starting to get going, and she claimed that she utilized Amanita to heal her brain after getting off benzos. So exactly what I was going through. And she broke down a little bit of the pharmacology, and I, did a bunch of research and read a bunch of articles and studies. And yeah, indeed, it hits the GABA system and the glutamate system, the two systems that benzodiazepines damage. And I had this one anecdotal report of a woman stating like immediate relief, and within weeks, like actual regeneration or healing from her perspective of her brain and her neurochemistry. So it took me a week or two, but I ended up doing like a micro dose, like 50 milligrams, super small dose, and immediately I felt relief. Not only that, I had this like big spike in psychic energy, which was cool. There's a fun story behind that, but like so to me it was at that point I was like, okay, these things they're gonna help. And within a couple weeks of microdosing with a couple medium larger doses peppered in there, I felt like I healed 70 to 80%. And what was miraculous about it was after I stopped, it wasn't gone. I was like it rewired the brain in some sense. And we don't have any data. There's no data about this, but like from the thousands of anecdotal reports that we've heard and gathered now, like it's doing something for sure. And it was 6 months. Like it wasn't my intention to start selling them. I just like it dropped into my lap. But yeah, so I reached out to Dreamer and I told her my experience. Told her I had this cannabis company and I wanted to sponsor a video of hers. And we did that, and it went over well, and we became friends, writing back and forth basically daily. And within 6 months, she asked me to start selling Amanita in the States because nobody was doing it. And yeah, so we shifted within a few months. Like the Amanita sales were far outperforming the CBD sales, so we shifted everything over to that, and it's just been an upward trajectory ever since. And then meeting Gabe, so we have a woman named Renee on who ran a bunch of social media and stuff as things started getting, as I started needing more help. Renee came on board, and she actually found Gabe, and I was like, this guy's amazing. I need to connect you two, and we connected, and we chatted a bunch, and within a couple months he was working for us, and now we're like best friends and talk every day, and we're really running this operation together. Yeah, Gabe's awesome.
Yeah, so cool, man. Yeah, I love it. I totally want to congratulate you for being able to get off of benzos, because I've seen firsthand the way that they can grip people in such a terrifying way, and just addiction in general. Like, I feel like it's really impossible to have 100% empathy and compassion for someone going through that, because you just think, I remember, back when I was a little bit younger, thinking like, oh, it's like they just want to eat sugar or whatever, and they just can't help themselves. But you don't realize the full like psychological and the physical like unease. That's just like, putting it as mildly as possible, unease. It's like horrible. Like you were correct to say like torture would be worse. It's like you don't even know until you've experience something like that. And so knowing that's why there's so many people who are like in recovery who want to help other people, because they really know what it's truly like. And the cool thing about Amanita too is that it's like you kind of got into it for that very specific purpose. But there's more to it than that. There's more than just the medicinal side of it. It's kind of an unexplored, like I wouldn't call it a psychedelic, but it's definitely got some kind of mystic proponent. So tell me about, getting into that side and maybe trying larger doses. Because so far I've only tried the microdose with one of the gummies that Gabe sent over to me. So yeah, just tell me a little bit about that side of it, the exploratory side of it.
Yeah, well, first, I think it's important to note that no matter what type of dose you're taking, from what we've seen and from anecdotal reports, like it seems to do things such as like with psychedelics. You go through some of the craziest like experiences when you're on a psychedelic. Like the world conspires to show you things, like crazy synchronicities will happen, and we find that that's very consistent with Amanita as well, regardless of the dose you're taking. Although, the dose makes the poison, as they say, or whatever. Like in larger doses, those types of things seem to increase. But as I've gone, and it seems to it seems to heighten your vibration and bring you in tune with yourself, your higher self, your true self, which leads to more expansive states of consciousness, but also leads to the universe. Like when you're in that type of state, the universe responds to you as such. So there's that aspect of it that really, like, even microdosing kind of seems to bring that out a lot. But I think that one of the really unique things about Amanita, particularly as you get into the larger doses, is it, as opposed to traditional psychedelics where they bring you in tune with the universe or with the cosmos or with these other dimensions or with entities. Amanita, it can do all that for sure, but what it really does is it brings you in tune with yourself. It brings you in your body. It brings you in your higher state of consciousness. Very grounded. It's very somatic, which I think is a really unique aspect of it that isn't really discussed much, but it also seems to work on the unconscious and subconscious minds as opposed to the conscious mind. It does a lot of really deep, it seems to do a lot of really deep work kind of behind the scenes, which is a really powerful aspect of it as well, where something like if you're working through a trauma or something with psilocybin or ayahuasca, like you're going to have to walk through a dance. You're going to have to dance with the symbolism and the darkness. And like it can be very, very uncomfortable. It seems to do a lot of that work behind the scenes and in the dream state. And that gets particularly more pronounced in higher and higher doses, which is a really, really wonderful aspect of it. It's a little dissociating, a little dissociative at higher doses. There's an obvious cholinergic aspect to it. The ibotanine, it seems to, similarly with something like psilocybin, it seems to instantly be able to rewire the brain and allow you to move through various blockages or issues very, very quickly, which is a really powerful aspect of it. It has a pronounced effect on the dream state. You go through some of the most psychedelic dreamscapes that I've ever experienced. And then it all the while does this, while you're a little bit dissociated, but you also have that GABAergic activity. So your inhibitions are lowered, you're relaxed, you're comfortable, you're happy, there's a jolliness associated with it. And then for me, it's allowed me to really connect with, I haven't really talked about this publicly much, and I don't really know, and the reason is I don't really know how to put it into words, but the mind of God, or the mind of the divine, in a way that I that's back to like, it connects you with your higher self, which is in essence the mind of the divine. Again, I don't know how to verb. I'll get there at some point, but yeah, it's another really, really interesting, uniquely powerful aspect about this mushroom.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think more people are slowly being willing to explore it, but this is something I talked to Gabe about, is that it's very misunderstood. It's like the possum of the mushroom kingdom, where it's like this totally misunderstood creature. So, and that has to do with like the example you gave of like people overdoing it, but partially because the lack of information. It's like this cycle, right, of like bad information, bad experience, and then it keeps feeding in, and then how things become like mythologized on the internet. And I experienced that too, because when I got the gummies, I told Gabriel, I was like, yo, I haven't tried it yet, like honestly I'm a little scared. I had seen the Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia episode where he took muscimol, and that seemed like a good kind of like destigmatization, but there was still a little bit of baggage, but that helped. So I think having more things like that. But yeah, Gabe was talking about the different alkaloids like the muscimol, and then the ibotenic acid seems to like be hit or miss with people. So can you talk a little bit about, Amanita, how it's been misperceived and like what you know about it? Yeah, and the compounds and the effects.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's the three main compounds are muscimol, ibotenic acid, and muscarine. Ibotenic acid is the one that gets the most flack. There was a study done, I don't know when it was, maybe the 90s or something, but they injected ibotenic acid, I think it was synthesized, maybe at least isolated ibotenic acid in copious amounts directly into rats' brains. And they were like, it's neurotoxic, it creates brain lesions, like this stuff is bad. Like, well, yeah, if you injected my brain with ibuprofen, like create a brain lesion, like that's not a really good study. It's not something that we can bank on. So ibotenic acid has been stigmatized quite a bit. It also can produce unpleasant effects if taken in too large of doses. That being said, it's a really, really beautiful compound when it comes down to it, and the synergy between that and muscimol and muscarine is really powerful. So ibotenic acid is a glutamate agonist. So it's kind of in direct opposition to something like ketamine, where it's excitatory on the glutamate system. That being said, muscimol is a GABA agonist, and the muscimol system, or in the GABA system and the glutamate system, are directly intertwined. So the more GABA you have, the less glutamate you have. So there's something going on in the brain there muscarine is a acetylcholine agonist, so it increases in acetylcholine similarly to a lot of neurotropics or smart drugs. So that's where you get kind of this pronounced neurotropic effect from it, which a lot of people really note in the microdoses or the low doses. But yeah, there's this beautiful interplay. We call them the holy trio, and there's just this beautiful synergy between the three compounds. And there's other minor compounds that are having some pharmacological action, but don't seem to. I'm sure they add in quite a bit, but we're not sure exactly where they come into play. But muscimol is what most people are looking for. Most people will take, so ibotenic acid decarboxylates into muscimol, so it converts into muscimol, and you do that through drying, and then you do that further through utilization of heat and acidity. So what people will do is they'll get the dried caps from us, or they'll forage them and dry them, or they'll purchase from another vendor, and then they'll brew a tea out of them. And they'll brew the tea by mixing it in a pot of water, and then they'll use lemon juice for that acidity, and then they'll boil it for 30 minutes. You can boil it longer for a little bit more of a decarb, and then they'll strain and they'll drink it, and that converts a lot of the ibotenic acid into muscimol. Now, I think a lot of people get confused with how much decarbing actually happens. Like, you still have ibotenic acid in that end result, and ibotenic acid, from what we've seen, it seems to have a lot. I mean, it has a lot of an effect. It has an important effect to the the holy trio. Like, you can't eliminate one entirely and get the same effect. Now, muscimol on its own can be achieved through things like fermentation. So people will make like bacterial cultures with it. People will brew kombucha with it, and they'll create a pure muscimol drink, and that's really, really great for things like sleep. It's sedating though. There's not as much of the I don't like saying psychedelic, but hallucinogenic quality to it when you do that. Yeah, I mean, it's all in all, it's a fascinating. They're fascinating compounds, and it elicits a fascinating experience.
Yeah. So, is there ibotenic acid, and then that turns into muscimol, or is there ibotenic plus muscimol? The ibotenic turns into even more muscimol.
They produce just ibotenic acid, and then that converts throughout the life cycle. And then, but there's considerably higher ibotenic acid in its natural state. And then when you dry it, it converts a little bit more. And then with the tea, or however you're doing a further conversion, it'll convert a little bit more.
So with Amanita being like your flagship, that's like the main thing, but that's not the only thing. If you go to your website, there's 2 or 3 pages of other, kind of plant medicine, plant allies, however you want to call it. So Some of my favorites being like Blue Lotus. I'm a huge fan of Blue Lotus in general, and then Gabe sent over some of the Blue Lotus gummies and then the extract, and I've been capsuling the extract myself, and I'll take them once a week. I'll take like 2 or 3 for like my band practice, because I find that the Blue Lotus puts me in a very like flowy, like I like to say it's a poetic state of mind, which is, I just feel like I can express what's in my heart, and you want that as a creative person. So tell me about like some of the other ones like Blue Lotus, Kanna, and how you expanded to start to include those other things. People like you who are interested in expanding consciousness are most likely curious about other modes of altering consciousness, especially if it results in a meditative tranquility. I've been experimenting with these gummies for my friends in Minnesota Nice Botanicals, a company made by people like us dedicated to using nature's magic alkaloids to make life a little bit better. They're well known for their Amanita muscaria, the iconic Mario mushroom whose image is synonymous with mushrooms. When I tried a microdose, I felt more zen. I'm already kind of a relaxed and mellow guy, and this kind of locked me even deeper into that state where it felt like there was no chance of me getting stressed out by anything. They also have powerful plants like Kanna, known for its calming mood lift, and my personal favorite, Blue Lotus, which was used as a sacrament in ancient Egypt. I always say that Blue Lotus puts me in a state where poetry will pour out of me, which makes it great for creativity in my music and other creative pursuits. It's a subtle, calming, and heart-opening effect that pairs well with so many other things. And what these all have in common is that feeling of subtle euphoria, lightness of being, and generally feeling more chilled out, without necessarily needing to visit hyperspace. You could use these as a way to unwind at the end of the day, relax you into a more creative headspace, or enhance your meditation, making it a good alternative to the devil's lettuce. They have way more than that on their website too, and I'm looking forward to trying some. I want you to know that I take very seriously vetting anything I would recommend to you guys. Minnesota Nice is run by good people. They're fellow psychonauts who get it and are on a purpose-driven mission to share nature's wonders with the world. There are a lot of sketchy products out there, and it can be hard to know where to look if you're interested in trying any of these things. I have complete trust in their integrity and that they're running this operation ethically and safely. I'm sharing this with you because I've been using the gummies myself for months. I like them, and I genuinely think that those of you who watch my channel would like them too. So if you're interested in adding these plant allies to your toolkit, go to the link in the description and use code SAUCE to get a 10% discount. When you do, you'll help support this channel, support my friends, and help yourself. 3 birds, 1 stoner.
Yeah, well, it started, so I've been using Blue Lotus on and off for 10, 15 years. I love it. I find the same thing. I use it for meditation a lot. It's really, and I'm a musician as well, so I'll use it for, I used to play drums and guitar and vocals and like metal bands and stuff, and I would use it for that. Now I just play a lot of piano, and I'll use it for that. But the crux of why I use it is meditation, because it just seems to like still the waters of the mind, like very full energy, like really, really potently. And when I'm like way more empathetic, feel people's emotions much more. I think that, and from what, we've kind of tapped into our customer base and talked to some of them about this, and from what we've gathered, is that people with more sense of a higher sense of spirituality and energy, they tend to get a lot more from it and feel a lot more from it. And for me, that's fascinating, because it was the ancient Egyptians like preferred psychedelic or plant medicine, and that's there are other options out there that seem to be much more pronounced or powerful. But if you think about them potentially being in a much more heightened spiritual state, like maybe it does make sense. So I'm curious, as we develop as a species, or I develop in my own spiritual journey, if those effects are going to get more and more powerful as vibration rises and we get more in tune. That's been something that I've been toying around with and very curious about, because honestly for me, the more I evolve and the more I grow, it seems like Blue Lotus just has more and more of an effect on me, which is pretty interesting and unique. Amanita seems the same way too. But then there's kava. I mean, we have so many of them, but kava is also a really big one that a lot of people are very familiar with now. Kava is probably the most well known out of all these, just with all the kava bars. I mean, I think you can buy kava at GNC or probably at Walmart. You can buy kava capsules. So we have a really good kava source. Kanna is a really fun one. Kanna is a South African. I mean, it's an African plant that acts as an SNRI, so it works very similarly to a lot of antidepressants on the market right now. And it also doesn't seem to have the addictive potential that these substances have, which makes it extremely powerful. Some people will equate it to, it'll release serotonin. So some people find it similar to something like MDMA. I don't necessarily think that that's true, but like for me personally, but what it does do is it really boosts the mood. So it's a really, really potent mood boosting. And they'll actually prescribe it in South Africa. The doctors they'll say, yeah, go chew on Kanna, 3 times a day or whatever. I mean, there's a handful of other ones. Aquama is a really cool one. Aquama is, so we have a Kratom website as well. I don't like to push that too much because Kratom is potentially, it's addicting. It has its place for sure. I utilized Kratom for a long time. I used Kratom to get off opiates in my 20s. It saved my life. But it also has a bite and it's addicting. There's something called Aquama, which is an African seed, and it hits the opioid receptors, and it seems to do so in such a way, I don't know how, where it's not addicting. So people can take Aquama for months on end and quit with no withdrawals. I haven't heard of one story of somebody getting withdrawal coming off of. So what we found and what people have utilized it for is for getting off of Kratom or for getting off of other opiates. It's not necessarily strong enough to get off of something like heroin, but if you're getting off of Kratom, like, people can switch to the Aquama and then taper off of that and really have no withdrawal or very minor withdrawals, which is really powerful. And it's definitely underutilized and not known about, which is too bad. But so that's a really good one. We have a bunch of dream enhancing substances. So the Silene capensis is maybe my favorite. That's another African product. It's a root, African dream root is what they call it. And the indigenous tribes would take a little bit of it and mix it in a jar and then with some water and shake it vigorously until a foam appeared on top. And then in the morning they would drink that foam or eat that foam, and then they'd shake it and eat the foam. There's got to be some, scientific reason why they're doing that. I don't know if that's ever been studied. I haven't seen any of that. But they would eat this foam until they were like bloated and couldn't do anymore, and then that night they would have visionary dreams. And then they do it consecutively again and again and again, and their dreams would keep getting more and more intense and visionary. What I found for me, it works just fine to just chew a little bit of the root, little half inch of the root, and chew on it in the morning and swallow the spit and spit out the pulp when it's all done. And my dreams that night will be considerably more vivid. I've always kind of noticed that there's a white light to everything's suffused in white light, it feels like, when I'm using Silene. I don't know if other people get that experience, but that's my personal experience. But then after doing that every morning for a week or so, dreams get crazy. That's probably I think that was the third, because I've utilized that throughout, and I reached out to these people and I was like, hey, I'm curious about buying wholesale, and we developed a relationship. And yeah, so that was the second product that we started carrying, and then I think it was Silene capensis, and then it's just I need to slow down on releasing products because it's expensive and it makes our job more difficult here. But we have 20 or 30 different plant allies on the website and there's also lots of information all over for anybody interested, and there's tons of information on the website and then online, and some of them are a little more obscure, but yeah.
Cool. So it sounds like you kind of add them on a case-by-case basis based on your own encountering of them. But I do see a common thread of relaxation and dream enhancement. That seems to be kind of the recurring theme.
Yeah.
Do you think that's kind of your criteria, or are you just taking it how it comes?
Yeah, it's really more how it comes and how things kind of fall into my lap. Unfortunately, there aren't really many good legal natural stimulants. There just aren't. So there's not really much that we can put on the site for that. There's things like betel nut. Like we had betel nut on for a little bit, but then, some of my concerns about it. I don't want to sell anything that's like potentially dangerous, and like I mean, it's known to be carcinogenic. So like I'd just rather stay away from that. But yeah, I mean, there's a host of other plants that we've looked at that just aren't. I just don't feel comfortable selling. And then a lot of it's sourcing. Like I don't want to sell anything that like I'm very meticulous about who I get product from, and I want it to be the best quality product, and I want to be able to give it at the best prices. So oftentimes like I wanted a wild lettuce product for a long time, and it took me like a year or two to finally find something that I was really happy about and wanted to sell to people. So it's just it's a lot of it's kind of the universe. It's just me like stepping back and being like, this is what I want, and letting things play out.
Yeah, that's not a very like traditionally business-like approach, but that is something I wanted to talk to you about because a lot of these things I'm bringing up, I talked to with Gabe, but since you guys are partners, I'd like to ask you some of the same questions just to see, your philosophy. So one of the other things I wanted to ask you about is like your philosophy on being an entrepreneur, because I think there's a lot of pushback. I see it at least in comments in the psychedelic world that it's like anything materialistic or like any kind of like selling of anything can be seen as like a greedy money grab, which I think is wrong, but I just think there is a bit of a resistance there. But if you can assure people that like things are being done ethically, well, first of all, I would say, people need to make money to survive. It's like, I don't know what else you expect people to do, just like be broke. But anyway, what's your philosophy on like kind of the ethical side and that kind of thing in the business world?
Yeah, I mean, like I think a lot of it comes back to intention and then actions behind that intention. Like I mean, my goal, like yeah, of course. I mean, I need this to be profitable. If it's not profitable, I don't eat. I don't pay my rent. My employees can't eat, and the business can't function. So that's a really important aspect of it. And it's kind of maybe it's bridging both worlds, the material and the spiritual. Like for me, this is a spiritual pursuit. Like that's what it is. It's not, I mean, it is a business, but that's not what it really is. Like in my heart, that's not what it is. And I'm on a mission, and this is something that I'm very passionate about. And it's also a mission that I didn't reach for this, this reached for me. So for me, it's almost like it's a calling, and like it's my duty to run the business as well as I can, so that I can further this mushroom or these plant medicines calling to me. And so there is kind of a dichotomy, and there's a balance to be achieved. And I'm not perfect, so I sway from side to side, and sometimes I'm too much on the materialistic side and trying to make things happen, and I lose sight of the broader vision, and particularly with like the monotony of running a business. Things get. I had a customer reach out and wrote this wonderful review comment and a little piece of gratitude yesterday, and I wrote him a really nice reply. But in that reply, one of the things I said was like, I don't think you understand how much, or like, no, you couldn't understand how much this means to me, because I've been stuck in grind mode, I feel like, for a couple weeks, and like this brought me out of grind mode and reminded me of why I'm doing this. So there is a balance to be struck, and it's difficult, but in the end, like I'm on a mission, and it's not my mission. So like it's my duty to make sure that I'm as in tune and as healthy spiritually, emotionally, physically as I possibly can be. And then I'm also grinding and like making things happen and making sure that we're able to, not just keep this going, but expand it, because the mission isn't just like we have customers, we need to supply them. The mission is this mushroom and these products want to be known. So like, what can we do to help make them known? So yeah, it is tricky though. It is tricky.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. I've had similar experiences being a music teacher, where there'll be days, weeks into just grinding. I'm like, man, I just feel like a babysitter with a guitar sometimes, like this is just like a summer camp for these kids. But then I'll have like a meditation, and in this moment I realize like I'm I'm giving these kids the gift of music, which is like such a heart-centered like thing. Like think about the way it's impacted me over the life. It's like over my life, and that I can give that feeling to, you know, the younger generation. It's like that is a profound mission actually, and it took me like getting into that other mode to like recontextualize what I was doing. So it sounds like you had like a similar thing.
Yeah. What kind of music do you play?
I do progressive psychedelic rock.
Beautiful. You'll have to send
So
me some stuff after this.
yeah, I will. Do you know like the band The Fall of Troy?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've played with them. Our last show was opening for them,
Cool.
and it's like a trippier version of that kind of stuff. Yeah,
Okay.
maybe not as heavy, but like yeah, that kind of thing.
Beautiful. Yeah. Send me some stuff, please.
For sure. And you were talking about, you know, this mission of getting this out to the world, but there's been some roadblocks, and this has all been kind of happening as, you know, after like the day or two after I asked you to do the podcast, I was reading an NPR article about how like the FDA made some statement about Amanita, because you know is a lot of sketchy stuff out there. And the FDA is known for doing this for like these little gray area zones, like with kratom and all these other things and research chemicals over the years. But what was funny is we had booked to do the podcast, and then I was reading this article, and then midway through I was like, "Oh shit, this is him. This is fucking Christian in this article." So yeah, tell for those of the audience who don't know what's going on, explain what's going on and how that's impacted you.
Yeah. So I'm gonna tell this in story fashion. And in 2022, in September, I started getting, now mind you, like at this point in time, there was one or two other companies doing this. We were, we were the most known company, and we were the top of Google. So I had everybody, and we had the best prices and the best products. So I had my first call from an individual in the cannabinoid space, not the cannabis space, the cannabinoid space, Delta 8, HHC, THC,
Oh, okay.
all that stuff. And they were excited about Amanita and seeing it as the next Delta 8. And I was like, yeah, I don't really think that's what this is, but I'm happy to entertain you and educate you and so on and so forth. Within a couple weeks, I had gotten like 10 calls from different big companies in this space. And I told them all the same thing, but they all wanted to work with me. And they really thought that Amanita was going to be the next smoke shop item. And it was actually a really fun time. We sold a ton of Amanita powder, which was a lot of fun for me. But it was back to this balance, because I was not operating the balance properly then. Like, these were not the type of people to be pushing Amanita. They were pushing it incorrectly. They were utilizing it. They were selling it as in smoke shops as a psychedelic, and like to people that want to get fucked up. Like, that's what they were doing. And what ended up happening after 8-10 months of this is everybody started realizing that that's not what it was. And I actually know the people that started doing this, but some people started bringing in 4-ACO DMT and putting it into these products and labeling them as Amanita. A lot of them would still buy I didn't know this initially, but a lot of them would still buy the powder from me so that they could get a lab saying that it has Amanita in it, and then they'd put 4-ACO DMT in it. And so these products started popping up in every smoke shop around the country. And then they started putting in other research chemicals. In the early days, we did some research and trying to figure out exactly what's going on, and we saw research chemical benzos in Amanita products. Super dangerous. Unbelievably dangerous. We saw pregabalin, Lyrica. We saw gabapentin. We saw research chemical dissociatives, and then other research chemical tryptamines in these products. And these are the mushroom gummy products, the Amanita gummy products in every single smoke shop and gas station around the country. Like, these are big companies. They have a lot of money. They have big distribution networks. Fast forward, 6 to 8 months later, in November 1st of 23, I got raided. So this facility here got raided. And I don't know if you've heard this story from Gabe, but we had, guns in our faces. They did a mock delivery. They told me I was selling psilocybin, which I'm obviously not. I was thrown in jail. Everything was confiscated. Like, everything that I had built up over the past 3 years was taken away. Like, it was a lot. It was a big dollar amount. Biggest, biggest hit I will probably ever take in my entire life. And I was thrown in jail and told that I was going away for 5 years minimum for drug trafficking. And I honestly thought, what I thought was that somebody framed me. I thought that somebody shipped me psilocybin to frame me, and then I was actually going away. So I had 2 days in jail. Thank God I have a really good lawyer, and she was able to get me out on the grounds that their testing isn't accurate. So they have what they call NIC tests, and they're like the little vial, and they're the reagent tests. They put like the cocaine in the vial and shake it, and it turns purple if it's cocaine or whatever. They're notoriously unreliable, and apparently Amanita turns purple in the psilocybin one, we found out. So they thought it was psilocybin. And again, I didn't know any of this at the time though, so I thought I was going away. But she got me out, and I didn't end up. And then it was 6 months of waiting for these test results to come back, like not knowing if they'd actually framed me or not. So that was a really stressful time period. And we ended up finally, like, everything came back, and they're like, yeah, everything's good. You can come pick up your material. By that point in time, none of it was good. So I basically lost everything. Well, I bring that up for a multitude of reasons. It's part of the story arc, but it's also, like I mentioned earlier, like I was on the materialistic side more. I wasn't really following the mission that much. I was, but like I was eating from the hand of the materialistic side, and the universe slapped me hard for it. Slapped me hard. Like it's not something that I can do on this mission. That's like, in me particular, I don't know why, but it's the mushroom doesn't want me to do stuff like that. So which is good. And it was a good learning experience. It was also fascinating that I got raided. I'm the one doing everything properly, and all these other bigger companies are doing things illegally. They're marketing products that aren't Amanita. They're putting illegal drugs in them. But it was me that ended up getting raided, which is very fascinating. Fast forward to now, there's new compounds being pushed all the time. There's still these products in every single gas station and smoke shop around the country. And a few months ago, this brand called Diamond Shrooms had a product line that ended up putting, I think it was 87 people got hospitalized and 3 people died. And the FDA tests came back and stated there was 4-ACO DMT, there was DMT in some of these, there was a bunch of different cavalactones, they found pregabalin, they found some muscimol. Not sure what caused the hospitalization, but even the FDA stated, like, it's obvious that it's not muscimol that caused this. Like, we can't say for sure what exactly caused this. But then a month or two later, the FDA comes out with their notice about Amanita and muscimol being extremely dangerous, citing the Diamond Shrooms fiasco and that there's not enough research and blah, blah, blah. There's been a bunch of other, like, hit pieces that have come out too. The University of San Diego, funded by some of the, I mean, this isn't like on record, but we have some people that have done some digging and found that this study was funded by some of the people in the psilocybin space, like the pharmaceutical psilocybin space. And this research paper that came out equated muscimol to fentanyl, which is just like unbelievably ridiculous, saying it's like as dangerous as fentanyl, amongst a bunch of other just like ludicrous claims. Like it could get ripped apart if it was peer reviewed by somebody that was, like actually willing to look at it like this. But so there's been a bunch of this. There's a ton of censorship online. There's there's issues with payment processing, with censorship on YouTube or Instagram. You can't run ads for this type of stuff. So there's a lot of roadblocks. But yeah, so most recently the FDA came out and stated that Amanita wasn't, and this is that NPR article that you're alluding to or referring to, that Amanita is not recognized as safe for them, and therefore it can't be added into food supplements, which is, to be honest, that's been their stance this whole time. So it's just like anything that's not recognized as safe by them, such as kratom. Like, it's not supposed to be put in to gummies or chocolate bars. So nothing's actually really changed, but what it's done is it's kind of, they've shown their hand, and they're basically saying, like, we're looking at everybody. And I don't know if it was done for these companies that are putting these research chemicals in there, or if it was done more for Amanita companies like myself. It's hard to say. But really when it comes down to it, at this point, nothing's changed. The FDA doesn't want us putting them into gummies and chocolates, and like, and I guess, but I mean, we're gonna like, yeah, I'm kind of at a wait and see at this point. Just we'll see what happens. But what it did do is they played their hand at least, and they alluded to the direction that they're maybe potentially going to be heading towards, which would be really 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 tragic if there was a ban, like if they made Amanita a controlled substance. That would be a really unfortunate tragic thing.
Do you have any kind of like plan B if something like that does happen?
Yeah, I can't talk about it, but yeah. I will say this: if they start doing that, if they start trying to make it illegal, I think we have things lined up to ensure that doesn't happen. I think.
Oh, okay. Cool. Well, that's crazy, and like especially the idea of the psilocybin pharmaceutical people being the ones to try to mess with that, like allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. Yeah.
So God, that's insane. That's like some stuff out of a movie, dude. Like that whole story with you getting raided and like going to jail. Like, God, man,
I hope they make a movie out of all this at some point. It'll be such a good story.
You were talking about the powder and stuff. I was just wanting to kind of get into some of the nuts and bolts about like your process of like how do you make extractions, and do you have like a lab and stuff like that?
Yeah. So we work with. I have a good friend who has a cannabis company and a manufacturing company in Texas. We do all of our extractions with him. They're honestly very simple extractions. I'm not going to run through the whole process because they're not did or anything, but like it's our own special unique process. But they're very very basic simple extractions. We'll generally utilize just the lesser aesthetic caps for that. So the ones that I don't want to put in the bags, we call them B grade. B grade isn't necessarily less potent, it's just they're not as pretty, and that'll get extracted, and then that'll get infused into gummies or chocolates or whatever it may be.
Okay, cool. What about one of the other ones that was on your website that intrigued me was the Hawaiian baby Woodrose.
Yeah.
So pretty sure that has LSA in it, which is also what Morning Glory Seeds has. But and actually, Morning Glory Seeds was Terrence McKenna's first psychedelic, and it was also my first psychedelic, which you can kind of see. Oh, nice, and it makes sense why, because it just seems like it's like a natural seed thing, and like there was something about it that felt so innocuous that it seemed like a good like way to go. But most people the Morning Glory experience, it's always just like, we're just writhing in agony with our stomachs hurting. You have to wash them, and even then you probably don't get all of the pesticide off or whatever. And I saw like a very light halo, like a light glow around light, and like some very light closed-eyed visuals, and then that was it. And so it's like, that's not really worth it. But Hawaiian Baby Woodrose, I can imagine, is a little less heavy on the stomach. And what's up with that?
Yeah, so let me preface this first by saying LSA is illegal. So we're not recommending the consumption of these seeds. I don't sell them for consumption. They're for cultivation purposes only. That being said, I've definitely consumed Hawaiian Baby Woodrose in the past, not out of the stock that I sell, yada, 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 But Hawaiian Baby Woodrose, they're powerful, man. Like 3 or 4 seeds is the equivalent of, hundreds of Morning Glory seeds. So like 3 or 4 seeds is generally like a dose that people would be looking at, like starting with. You can kind of equate 4 seeds maybe with like a tab of LSD. So they're powerful, like really tiny seeds that pack a big punch. You want to get the husks off of them, kind of like a peanut shell, like that. Not the shell, but the skin on a peanut. Just get that off. That'll increase the nausea. LSA or Morning Glory and Hawaiian Baby Woodrose have always felt very viney to me, and I don't think that makes sense to anybody unless they've maybe experienced it. But you kind of feels like vines in the system. Now, again, I don't know if that makes sense to you at all, but it's very very earthy. It's very sedating, which is unique for a psychedelic. It can be very very visual, but then there's also generally a purge associated with them, and a lot of people find them very very uncomfortable. They're definitely not for the faint of heart, but they can be extraordinarily visual and extraordinarily visionary. They're really really powerful.
Interesting. Nice.
Yeah, we'll send you some.
Okay, cool.
I used to like taking one before going to bed, and I found that it would, the effects would last while I was sleeping and dreams would be enhanced. I'd get a deep sleep, but then the next day I always just felt so tuned in. I felt really good.
Yeah. It's like almost like you're going for just the afterglow of a light
Yeah.
trip.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. And it didn't like keep you awake or anything like that.
No, it would help. Yeah, there's this like sedating quality to LSA that like yeah, it worked really well.
Cool. Um Blue Lotus too is also known for being able to combine very well with other things. So are there any combos, like whether it's with two things that you have or Blue Lotus and just something else that you like? And then also I find this weird thing where like Blue Lotus is totally legal, but for some reason like some YouTube videos and stuff they'll get demonetized by talking about it. It's so do you have any knowledge around that?
Well, it's the same with Amanita. It's the same with a lot of these different plant medicines. Unfortunately, it's just yeah, YouTube has their own policies and they yeah they can kind of do whatever they want on their platform, which it's unfortunate because it'd be nice, if people are able to monetize these types. Like we're working with a guy named Meta. I don't know if you're familiar with Meta. He's done a bunch of really big drug videos, but he just got demonetized and he was about to put out a video for us and now he's like, dude, I can't do it. Like the monetization is more important to me than the sponsorship or the revenue that I get from your affiliate link.
Mm-hmm.
And so like it inhibits our ability to get these products out to people or to get information about the plants out to people, which is really too bad. But Blue Lotus I call it the Synergizer because it just synergizes so nicely with just about anything. My favorite is with tryptamines, like any tryptamine. It adds this texture and empathogenic quality to something like psilocybin. It just like I don't even really know how to explain it. It just brings things to a different. It doesn't make it more. It just makes it different, but in a really like lovely, pleasant way. It combines great with it really combines great with everything, like really anything. Like a lot of people love mixing Blue Lotus in with cannabis joints or something like that, just because it just adds something to it. But yeah, I mean, experiment around, I guess.
Totally, totally. So when let's say you're doing it with tryptamine, would you just have it at the same time? And if so, how much are you partial to like the gummies or the extract and like what's your whole dosage approach to Blue Lotus?
I take larger doses than most people do for just about anything, I think, but maybe particularly with Blue Lotus. Like I like the extract. The gummies are great. I just need a lot of the gummies to get to where I like to be. I think you said you encapsulate it, right? Extract. Yeah, so that I mean you're probably getting a few grams, which
Okay.
for me to smoke.
Yeah.
I don't. That's maybe in my 20s I liked doing that, but I'll brew tea with the flowers every now and then. But it's the extract is what I like the best. I personally just mix it in with some hot water and drink it, and it's got a nice floral taste to it. It's pleasant. It smells good. It tastes good. Yeah, that's my preferred way of ingesting. And then when I'm mixing it, yeah, I'll already be taking. I mean, it really any of them. Like you can take it before, you can take it at the same time, you can take it after. It's kind of fun to get up on like a psilocybin or LSD or something of that nature, and then halfway through the experience, take some Blue Lotus just because it adds a whole nother texture to it.
With tryptamines and mushrooms and stuff, I'll do Blue Lotus like on the come down because it just like I love having like coziness in the last
Yeah,
like hour or two of the trip,
sure.
drink some Blue Lotus tea and then like get in a blanket and then watch something that like reminds you that you're a human being on earth, kind of grounding you back from this other dimension.
I
So
really love Amanita for the come down of psychedelics.
interesting.
We one of the things that we've called it's such a powerful integration tool that and then it lowers inhibitions. It's so relaxing. Particularly once you get into like I really love like 3 to 5 grams after a psychedelic journey because it's not anything crazy, but it's very relaxing and it really allows me to like flow through what I just experienced and embody it and integrate it. Like I mentioned before, it seems to like almost instantaneously allow you to rewire the brain. So like a lot of what integration is like rewiring so you can embody what you just learned and went through. And Amanita seems to really help with that. We've worked with some people at ayahuasca retreats and stuff that'll give their attendees Amanita in the days following ayahuasca trips for that very purpose, for the integration and whatnot. And there's nothing on the face of this earth that I've found allows one to integrate better than Amanita. So recommendation at some point.
Yeah, that's fascinating, man. I've never heard of anyone doing that. So this feels like some kind of almost like cutting edge stuff, you know? So, and this is just based on your own experience and then being like, hey, this could work for someone else.
Yep. I mean,
Nice.
honestly, dude, like everything that we do, everything has been based on my own experience. And then I just confer with, you know, customers and stuff. Like, so we have, you know, with Amanita, we have different regions, right? So we have like Siberian Amanita or Baltic Amanita or Carpathian Mountain Amanita. And like, I just started noticing like, the Siberian seems to take me like a little bit deeper into my psyche. It seems to have a depth to it. The Carpathian, I seem to be more creative when I take those. I seem to be more energized with the Baltic. The Nordic, I seem to be more like, I don't know, powerful, it feels like. And so I just kind of floated these out as like, this is my experience, and everybody confirmed. And so yeah, it's been the whole journey. It's just like, this is kind of how I feel. Like, what do you guys think? And then it's like, I don't know if we're like programming the matrix, you know, with that, or if that's really like how it is. I don't know, but it's consistent now.
Yeah. That's what's cool about that too, is that, you know, Amanita, it sounds like it's all over the world in different regions. I don't know what kind of climate it prefers. Like when you were on that hike, what state were you in?
I'm in Minnesota, so they prefer they grow in the fall generally, and then they like cold at night, not freezing, and then you know generally autumn weather, like 60 or so, and then 40 or something like that at night. So they'll pop up, and they grow on every continent except for Antarctica. So they grow all over the place. So like every culture basically had access to Amanita, which is really fascinating as well. But yeah.
Nice. And the other thing that popped into mind was that how like the original term for shaman comes from Siberia, and that place is well like known for having Amanita. I actually thought that was the only place that it was from. I didn't realize that it was so ubiquitous. So that's cool that it's like it's kind of going to the root of shamanism by using that. So are there any like psychedelic experiences that you've had that you want to talk about, or is that like personal for you? Because I love hearing like how people get into that world too.
Yeah, I mean, I can go a little bit into that. So I mean, psychedelics they've really shaped my existence. You know, they've guided me along my path and my journey. Like the Amanita story is one that I talk about obviously a lot more, but my DMT story is a big, long, ever playing out story, you know, and it is a story. It's a story arc. Like there's development, and it's progressed and it's evolved as I've evolved, and it's, you know, moved me in different directions. Like I have I don't know if I'll go into any specific experiences, but I have my woman, and she's like on my first DMT experience. She came to me, and she's, you know, green and beautiful, and she's like Gaia or Sophia or whatever, and mother DMT, and like she's with me all the time. Like I can talk to her right now if I want. Like I've developed that relationship with her, and 90% of my DMT experience is like she's there. Either she's the one that's like guiding me through it, or she's in the background watching these other entities, you know, work on me or work with me. So she's been really guiding a lot of this and showing me a lot of what I'm supposed to do. I'll also say I was shown a timeline in February of 21 on a really probably the most profound DMT experience that I've ever had, and it was I didn't know this at the time, but what I figured out is it was a 7-year timeline. And I'm just about halfway through that timeline, and everything they showed me was in metaphors, you know, of course. But like literally everything that they've shown me has come to pass. Every single thing that I saw. And what I saw moving forward for the next 3.5 years, the timeline was kind of like, the premise in a sense was like dark to light. Like there's me going through the darkness and into the light. In the beginning of this like the rainbow serpent, Quetzalcoatl or whatever, he like brought me into this room with all these potted plants. There was no plants in them though, just soil. And you know, it's all happening at the speed of light. And he holds up this seed, and he's like, "You are the seed." and he plunges it into one of the plants, and he says, "But seeds don't germinate in the light." And the premise of it was like, like I'm going through the darkest period of my life, and I really have been. Like throughout the past 5 years since benzo withdrawal has been dark. Like, and I've been getting out of that, and like, yeah. Anyways, so like what I saw coming up was the light side of this, and that's what I've just been starting to move through. Like even with like all the stuff that like healing is hard, man. Like it's painful. Like healing and growth, and like I've gone through a lot since benzo withdrawal, and like the worst experiences of my life, but they've allowed me to germinate, right? Like they've allowed me to germinate. Like that's what we need. The seed doesn't germinate in the light. So yeah, I'm not going to go into any specifics, but what I saw coming up was the light. And if even half of what I saw comes true, like the world's going to be in for a really beautiful time, and my life is going to be really, really magical. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
That's so cool. That's some powerful stuff, man. I love that. And I love that like psychedelics at their best can give us kind of a north star and alignment with what our purpose is, and I've had similar experiences too where it like became clear what my mission was, and it's not like specific actions necessarily, but like a feeling and an intention kind of. Yeah, so cool. Well, I think that's a very good note to end it on. I got to get going to do some music lessons, but
Beautiful.
yeah, it was super cool to get to know you a little bit and hear the story for the first time. I was holding off. I want to make sure I hear it straight from you. And yeah, you want to plug Minnesota Nice?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so you can search us on Google. It's mnniceethno.com. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, all that stuff. We're very responsive. So if you have questions, reach out. We have educational resources all over the website. Tons of really awesome products. Yeah. Hit us up.
Cool. You guys rock, man. Thanks for thanks for everything so far, and we'll definitely be staying in touch. And I'm excited to see how the future plays out with everything with you, man.